Operation Uranus was not a dramatic battlefield epiphany or sudden reversal born of desperation. It was the inevitable consequence of tragic imbalance meeting disciplined operational design. By November 1942, the German war effort in the south of the Soviet Union had stretched itself into a gross, grotesque shape, a powerful fist division into Stalingrad, attachment to arms so thin that they could not bear the weight. The Red Army didn't challenge the feast, it severed the arms. The German summer offensive of 1942, Case Blue, pursued two incompatible objectives at once: the seizure of the Caucasian oil fields and the capture of Stalingrad. This dual ambition fractured German concentration. When Rostov fell and the Wehrmacht surged east and south, the front expanded hundreds of kilometers. The logistical spine required to sustain it grew brittle. Stalingrad gradually consumed German attention, manpower, and prestige. The city became not merely a target but a fixation. As divisions bled themselves white in street fighting along the Volga, the broader operational picture was quite rotting. The German Sixth Army, commanded by Frederick Paulus, was formidable in reputation but hollow in reality. Its infantry divisions were exhausted, its armored reserves depleted, and its operational freedom constrained by Hitler's insistence on taking the city block by block. More dangerously, its flanks were not secured by German strength. They were held by Romanian armies with Italian and Hungarian formations further along the Don. These allied units were loyal but structurally unfit for modern mechanized warfare. Their artillery was outdated, their anti-tank weapons ineffective against Soviet armor, their frontage absurdly wide. They were asked to hold space, not to fight an enemy designed to shatter space itself. The Soviet Stavka understood this imbalance with ruthless clarity. While German intelligence obsessed over Moscow and Army Group Center, Soviet planners quietly assembled mass around Stalingrad's periphery. Operation Uranus, conceived not as frontal assault on the city but as deep operational envelopment, aimed at annihilating the forces inside it. The plan relied on classical principles refined by industrial warfare: mass surprises, depth, and speed. The Red Army didn't need tactical brilliance in the ruins of Stalingrad, it needed disciplined execution far away from them. Preparation was exhaustive and imperfect. Soviet logistics struggled, units arrived late, winter equipment was lacking, and some commanders openly doubted the feasibility of the plan. Yet, the central decision stood firm. Stalin and the Stavka chose commitment over hesitation. Deception masked the build-up as much as possible, while false signals suggested the main Soviet effort would strike elsewhere. Breaches were built under camouflage. Armies were positioned behind the Romanian fronts with one purpose: rupture, exploitation, closure. On the morning of 19th November, the illusion collapsed. Soviet artillery erupted along the northern flank of the Axis position, targeting the 3rd Romanian Army. The bombardment was not merely destructive, it was disorganizing. Communications vanished, command posts disintegrated, morale collapsed under the weight of shock and inevitability. Romanian infantry fought where they could, but were structurally incapable of stopping armored exploitation once the line cracked. Soviet tanks, mechanized formations pushed through the fog and snow by bypassing resistance rather than grinding against it. The objective wasn't territory, it was geometry. German reaction was fatally slow. The Sixth Army remained psychologically locked inside Stalingrad. Its armored divisions were not immediately redeployed to seal the breach. The reserves that were committed were understrength, poorly supplied, and forced to improvise defensive action against an enemy already moving beyond them. The battlefield ceased to be linear, it became fluid, and in fluid war, delay is death. The following day, the southern blow fell. Against the Fourth Romanian Army, Soviet forces struck again. exploiting the same structural weakness with the same operational logic. Confusion reigned on both sides, but confusion favors the attacker when momentum is maintained. German attempts to counterattack with limited mobile reserves inflicted losses but failed to alter the strategic direction of the Soviet advance. Every German unit moved to unplug one hole, exposed another. The shape of the encirclement was already forming. What followed was not a battle but a race. Soviet tank corps drove towards Kalach, the key crossing over Don River. The Germans had neither the reserves nor the situational awareness to secure it in time. When Soviet forces seized the breach, the operational verdict was sealed. Northern and southern Soviet spearheads linked up, enclosing the Sixth Army and elements of the Fourth Panzer Army inside a tightening grip. Hundreds and thousands of Axis troops were trapped inside of the Don, cut off from maneuver, dependent on supply they didn't control. The encirclement wasn't immediately lethal, it was terminal. German soldiers withdrew into Stalingrad's ruins, surrounding positions, abandoning equipment and vehicles, and wounded along the frozen roads. Command structures fractured as survival replaced coordination. The Red Army, having completed the inner ring, began constructing an outer one, preparing not only to destroy the pocket but to repel any attempt at relief. The Germans still possessed fighting strength. What they had lost was freedom. At this moment, the German command faced a single decision that would define the fate of the Sixth Army: a breakout. Attempt immediately might have saved a portion of the force at terrible cost. Instead, Hitler chose immobility. Stalingrad was decided and declared a fortress. Air supply was promised, where arithmetic alone should have killed the idea. Luftwaffe couldn't deliver the encircled army requirement, especially in winter. Under Soviet air pressure over vast distances, the situation converted an operational defeat into a strategic catastrophe. Operational Uranus achieved something unprecedented on the Eastern Front. Entire German field armies, not shattered in retreat but intact and immobilized, were condemned to destruction. The psychological impact was as devastating as material loss. German invincibility died not in the rubble of factories but in the cold expanses beyond them, where Soviet planning meant German overextension. The deeper lesson of Operational Uranus isn't national or ideological, it is structural. Armies that pursue symbolic objectives, often neglecting operational coherence, invite annihilation. Strength concentrated at one point creates vulnerability elsewhere. Allies asked to compensate for structural weakness becomes liability, not assets. Above all, war punishes rigidity. The Soviets won not because they fought harder in Stalingrad, but because they refused to fight there at all until the enemy was already doomed. By the time the guns fell silent in February 1943, the outcome had long been decided. Operation Uranus was the true end of the Battle of Stalingrad. Everything that followed was merely the execution of a sentence that had already passed.